Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Kunti Chanabala Girivaradari Jai Kunti Chanabala Girivaradari Yashodanandana Janarandana Yashodanandana Janarandana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Asto Tarashata Shishimat Vaisha Naravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Asto Tarashata Shishimat Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Kodi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Oh, glorious to the Simul devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious to the Simul devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious to the Simul devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Oh, glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, almost all that is troublesome to the heart is completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. We'll start by reading Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. The chapter is entitled India Dancing White Elephants. It was 1 a.m. Prabhupada sat in his room with Achyutananda, Jayapataka, and Devananda Maharaj. He explained how irresponsible letters from his disciples in India had perpetuated within ISKCON a deep misunderstanding of the spiritual master's position. He quoted the verse Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shastre and explained it. The Guru is on an equal level with Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not God, but he is the dearmost servant of God. Prabhupada continued preaching to his disciples, clearing away any misconceptions about the spiritual master's position. All the past unpleasant events, he said, were now being rectified. The devotees should continue working together with new life and vigor. Achyutananda asked Prabhupada if he could take sannyas. The Indians, he said, would respect a sannyasi more. Prabhupada agreed that sannyas would help Achyutananda's preaching, and he said that Jayapataka also should take sannyas. The ceremony would be in a week on Radhastami. The Amrita Bazar Patrika carried a front-page news of Prabhupada's arrival. A photo showed Prabhupada walking with his hand in his bead bag, surrounded by young sannyasis carrying dandas. This is a quote from the paper. Many VIPs have come to Dum Dum Airport, or Dum Dum Airport maybe, before, but never have we seen gaiety and celebrations of this magnitude. It was difficult to imagine that he was 75 years old because he was completely fresh after this long journey. With a little smile on his face, he blessed one and all with the word Haribol. And then that's the end of the quote. Prabhupada wrote to the devotees in Japan. In India, from the very moment we step down from the airplane, there is good propaganda work going on. The boy Bruce is improving and becoming more interested. He has now sacrificed his hairs for Krishna. That is a good sign. In other words, he has shaved, shaved up, shaved his head. That's the end of the quote. Calcutta was in political turmoil. A group of communist terrorists, the Naxalites, had been rioting, murdering prominent businessmen, and threatening the lives of many others. Many wealthy Marwari industrialists were leaving the city for Delhi and Bombay. Aside from the terrorists, Bengali college students were growing unruly. But the older people of West Bengal, comprising most of Prabhupada's visitors, were alarmed by the violence and unrest. The only shelter, Prabhupada told them, was Krishna. This is again a quote from somewhere. People are in very much perturbed condition. All of them are expecting me to do something for ameliorating the situation. But I am simply advising them to chant Hare Krishna, because this transcendental sound is the only panacea for all material diseases. Prabhupada saw no need to fabricate a special program for the social problems of Kolkata. Chanting Hare Krishna was the only panacea for all material diseases. The question was how best to use his American disciples to give this panacea to the Indians. Prabhupada had his party of 10 devotees, and he had asked his leaders in the West for 20 more within the month. He had ordered $60,000 worth of books and magazines from Dai Nippon. That's the Japanese publisher that they would use to print their books. And his sannyasis were going daily into the streets to perform kirtan. So in India, the movement was very slow in the beginning. It attracted a lot of attention, huge amount of attention. Like thousands would come to, even sometimes tens of thousands, to like the programs they held, because people are so fascinated by these Europeans dressed in Vaishnava attire and chanting the holy name, and taking up the lifestyle of Krishna consciousness. But very few would join in. They were like, there was a lot of, I guess, suspicion, or just it was a bit much for them, they were a bit unsure. And Srila Prabhupada knew that he had to do it because in the future it would be successful. And we see now, long after Srila Prabhupada has left this world, that in India, ISKCON is really spreading at the moment in a very wonderful way. And there are like literally millions of devotees or persons connected in some way to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement of chanting Hare Krishna. And becoming involved in the activities of ISKCON. And so many temples are opening, huge temples with very high standard of daily worship and huge prasadam distribution, and so many devotees taken part in it. For example, in uh, Delhi, just in Delhi alone, there's, I believe, 6 big temples filled with many devotees doing service and huge prasadam distribution. And another example is in Vrindavan. They distribute they have free food for life prasadam distribution. Aside from all the other prasadam distribution they do on the Vrindavan ISKCON campus, they have this free prasadam distribution where they distribute khichdi prasadam in like a little leaf plate. And as far as I understand, they're doing about 20,000 of those plates a day, which is quite amazing every day. So pretty much no one in Vrindavan needs to go hungry, really. They can just go, I think it's twice a day they do it. So everyone can just get fed in the whole of Vrindavan, pretty much. And yeah, it's not just food distribution, it's prasadam. But anyway, I just wanted to make that point that although it started very slow, now it's actually really big in India and it's really progressing very nicely. Okay, so we read from Srimad Bhagavatam. Unfortunately, it didn't get written up on the board and I noticed too late, otherwise I would have done it, the verse, but anyway. So it's Canto 5, Chapter 10, entitled Maharaj Rahugana Meets Jada Bharat. I guess I'll just have to say the verse. And maybe, does anybody want to look on their phone, or should I just say it? Anybody like to look on their phone? No, maybe I'll just say it. Savaya Bhava Loka Nidikshanatam Avyaktalingo Vicharachapi Svit. Hang on, let's make sure I'm in the right place here. Sorry. Making sure. I think I've prepared for the wrong verse, although it's the same section, so it should be okay. Yeah, I think I prepared for the wrong verse. That's okay. Okay. Yogeshvaranam Katimandabudhi Katam Vichakshita Grihanubandaha Savaibhavaloka Nirikshanatam Avyaktalingo Vicharatyapisvit Yogeshvaranam Katimandabudhi Katam Vichakshita Grihanubandaha Savaibhavaloka Nirikshanatam Avyaktalingo Vicharatyapi Svit Yogeshvaranam Katimanda Buddhi Katam Vichakshi Katam Vichakshita Grihanubandaha. Please repeat the word for word. Saha, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, or his incarnation Kapiladev, Vai, indeed, Bhavan, your good self, Loka Nirikshana Artam, just to study the characteristics of the people of this world. Avyaktalingaha, without manifesting your real identity. Vicharati, are traveling in this world. Apiswit, whether Yoga Ishvaranam, of all the advanced yogis, gatim, the characteristics or actual behavior, and the buddhi, who are illusioned and have become blind to spiritual knowledge. Katam, how? Vichakshita, may know. Griha anubandha, I who am bound to by my attachment to family life or worldly life. Translation. It is a fact that your good self is the direct representative of Kapiladev, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality. Excuse me, let me say that again. Is it not a fact that your good self is the direct representative of Kapiladev, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? To examine people and see who is actually a human being and who is not, you have presented yourself to be a deaf and dumb person. Are you not moving this way upon the surface of the world? I am very attached to family life and worldly activities, and I am blind to spiritual knowledge. Nonetheless, I am now present before you and am seeking enlightenment from you. How can I advance in spiritual life? Okay. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although Maharaj Rahugana was playing the part of a king, he had been informed by Jadabharat that he was not a king, nor was Jadabharat deaf and dumb. Such designations were simply coverings of the spirit soul. Everyone must come to this knowledge, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2.13. Dehi nosmin yata dehe. Everyone is encased within the body. Since the body is never identical with the soul, the bodily activities are simply illusory. In the association of such a sadhu as Jadabharat, Maharaj Rahugana came to this awareness that his activities as a royal authority were simply illusory phenomena. He therefore agreed to receive knowledge from Jadabharat, and that was the beginning of his perfection. Tat vijnanartam sa gurum iva vigachet. A person like Maharaj Rahugana, who was very inquisitive to know the value of life and the spiritual science, must approach a personality like Jadabharata. Tasmad gurum papradyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam. Bhagavatam 11.3.21. One must approach a guru like Jadabharat, a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to inquire about the goal of human life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishnam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who can fulfill the desires of everyone just like desire trees, and are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Chaitanya Swami Namane Namami Bhakti Chaitanyam Prabhupada Sevanam Shivajadana Mahatma Padashkam Prapanavam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachatne Nivishesha Shrinivari Asya Chatarne. So just to give a little bit of context for those of us who may not be familiar with the pastime or have not heard it in a while, and even if we are familiar and have heard it recently, then these topics are transcendently as ever fresh, so it's still very nice to hear the pastime. So this Jadavarat, who's been addressed here by Maharaj Rahugana, this Jadavarat was in his previous life the great Bharat Maharaj, after whom this planet was named Bharatvarsha, and still India is known as Bharat. So he was a great personality, Maharaj Bharat, and he actually left. He not only was a great king, but he became a great devotee. He retired from his kingly life at the, and as was done in Vedic culture, and took full shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he was practicing Krishna consciousness. And he became very advanced. It's described that he attained the level of bhava, which is one stage before the level of perfection, or in other words, before love, Krishna prema, pure love of God. So he was very advanced devotee and situated in ecstatic love of Krishna, basically. But then one day, while he was performing his meditation, a deer, a pregnant deer, was trying to cross a river, and it was trying to escape from a lion which had roared very loudly. And in the process of that all happening, the deer had a miscarriage, and the baby deer came out and into the river. And the mother deer actually died in the process, but the baby fowl survived. And so Maharaj Bharat, seeing this whole scene taking place nearby, now saw this baby deer floating down the river, and he felt impelled to go save it, as anyone would. And so he saved the deer, but as time went by, and he was taking care of it, but as time went by, he became more and more distracted by this baby deer, and became very attached to it, very affectionate towards it, to the extent that he dropped his spiritual practices. Eventually, just gave up his spiritual practices entirely and became absorbed in taking care of the deer. And at some point, he passed away, and while passing away, he thought of the deer. And in this way, in his next life, he actually took birth as a deer. Because whatever one thinks of at the time of death, that is what one will become in one's next life. As Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita, whatever state of being one remembers at the time of death, that state one will attain without fail. So he took birth as a deer, but by the grace of the Lord, because of his devotional service, the Lord allowed him to remember his previous life. And so as a deer, he left everything. He didn't get involved even with the rest of his dear companions, like his family and so on. He just left everything and went to where there were devotees living in the forest, like in the renounced order, and sort of just took shelter there and remained with them. And in that way, in his next life, he was thinking of Krishna at the time of death, and in his next life he took birth as this personality we're reading about here, named Jada Bharat. So he took birth. It was a Brahmana, a very good Brahmana family, but he was now above all the even Varnashram, and he was situated. He was like a liberated soul, actually. So he decided to take the role of completely neglecting all externals and just being internally situated in Krishna consciousness, while externally playing the role of like a deaf and dumb person, someone who's like apparently not able to function materially, cannot speak, cannot hear, just without any intelligence. He played like that so that he wouldn't get entangled in any material affairs. But internally, he was situated in Krishna consciousness fully, and and situated in transcendental bliss. So while going about life in that way, he was captured by these. Well, I don't know if capture is the right word, but he was forced into carrying a palanquin for the great King Maharaj Rahugana, who was ruling a lot of land, a big region at that time. And these servants were carrying Maharaj Rahugana on a palanquin, and they saw this Jada Bharat, and so they forced him to help them. And so he's carrying them. He just sort of went along with it, but because he was an advanced devotee, he would always check while he was walking. He wanted to first see there weren't any ants or insects to step on. So in that way, he could not keep up with the rest of the team who was carrying the palanquin, and it sort of created a bumpy ride for the king. And so the king chastised the servants, and they pointed out that it was this new person, Jada Bharat, who was causing the problem. And so the king first sarcastically addressed him, and then when it continued, he actually addressed him in a very angry mood. And at that point, Jada Bharat sort of replied to him with transcendental knowledge. And the king, realizing that he had actually now offended a great saint and a devotee of the Lord, he immediately got down from his palanquin, offered his obeisances, to beg for forgiveness, but also then he began inquiring from Jada Bharat that he wanted to now receive transcendental knowledge from him. I'll just read the translation once more after hearing that context. Is it not a fact that your good self is the direct representative of Kapila Dev, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? To examine people and see who is actually a human being and who is not, you have presented yourself to be a deaf and dumb person. Are you not moving this way upon the surface of the world? I am very attached to family life and worldly activities, and I am blind to spiritual knowledge. Nonetheless, I am now present before you, and am seeking enlightenment from you. How can I advance in spiritual life? So, as Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport here, that anyone who is inquisitive to know the value of life and the spiritual science, he must approach a personality like Jada Bharat. And Srila Prabhupada quotes a very important verse, Tat Vijnana Tam Sagurum Ivabhigachet. And Srila Prabhupada has spoken a lot on this verse before in his lectures, that who actually should approach a spiritual master. It's not just anyone that should approach a spiritual master. but it's one who has realized that, uh, like realized his awkward position in material life. Because in material life we face the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease, and but we don't want to have to undergo birth, death, old age, and disease. We want to be able to live forever, and we don't want to become diseased and old. We want to remain youthful. Everyone wants this, actually. That is why you see people do everything they can to avoid dying. They do everything they can to avoid becoming diseased or ill. And generally speaking, people also do everything they can to avoid becoming old. If they can do something to increase the duration of their youth through lifestyle, through cosmetics, or something or other, they want to increase their youth, maybe through some special diet. So why is it that we don't want these things if they're just natural? We don't want them because the soul is by nature eternal. The soul's by nature eternal, and it's by nature free from these things, like old age and disease. And so therefore, because we are the soul, we're not the body, we don't want these things imposed on us. Um, and factually speaking, these things are not actually imposed on us, they're imposed on the body, and we are different from the body. So, but we'll come to that in a moment. But the point is that when one starts to realize that one's in an awkward position and one doesn't want these things forced on one, such a person, according to this verse I think this verse is from the Upanishads, such a person is ripe, you could say, is ripe to approach, he's the right person to approach a spiritual master. In other words, as Srila Prabhupada would often point out, it's not a fashion. Accepting a spiritual master or a guru is not a fashion, just some fun thing to do or to have, like a cool thing so that you can have a picture on your wall of the guru. It's not like that, it's a serious business. Um, and when one approaches a spiritual master, then one should inquire, uh, inquire submissively about the goal of human life. What you try to understand now, what I should do with this to make this human form of life successful. What is actually the goal of life, and how can I achieve that? Um, so that is what Maharaj Rahugana now is doing. That he's heard the knowledge that he has heard from Jada Bharat he wants it's sort of made him aware now that right, there's more going on here. I need to understand my actual position. And he's really inquisitive to now really understand more and make his life successful. And that is what does happen, that he does uh, accept Jadabharat as a spiritual master, accepts instruction from him, and he actually makes his life successful. So that was Maharaj Rahugana's great fortune, that he uh, had the right um, how do you say, he had that right understanding, he had that inquisitiveness to really uh, try to understand the goal of life from Maharaj, from Jada Bharat. So the first point that Jada Bharat had instructed to Maharaj Rahugana, which incidentally was the verse that I had originally prepared for, was the very first instruction Jada Bharat gave to Maharaj Rahugana. And that's been referred to here in this purport by Prabhupada, was that the person, the person is not, we're not the body, we're the soul. And that things like being a king, uh, or like Jadabard being deaf and dumb, or Maharaj Rahugana being a great king, these are all uh, like simply coverings of the spirit soul. They weren't the real person. And Srila Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 13 in the purport here. Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir iras tatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death, and a sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Um, so it's also, how do you say, it was Maharaj Rahugana, Jadabharat's first instruction to Maharaj Rahugana. And there's a reason for that. And you'll notice that it's also Krishna's very first instruction to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that we're not the body. And that is because unless one understands that the soul is different from the body, one cannot make any further progress in spiritual life. It's the first lesson in spirit, therefore it's the first lesson in spiritual life. If even if one tries to be religious, if one has not understood this first point, then one will simply remain materialistic. And Srila Prabhupada has explained that if one tries to be religious but does not understand that he's not the body, then the natural result of that is that one approaches God as an order supplier to fulfill one's material needs, material desires. Because if you think you're the body, then it's natural that you would approach God to help you gratify the senses of your body. Because when you think you're the body, you have the understanding that the goal of your life is to gratify the senses of your body. So therefore, one has to first understand that one's not the body, and therefore the goal of life is not actually sense gratification. And actually, sense gratification can never satisfy one because because the body is not the self. The body is like a temporary covering. So an example is given, I think it's from the Upanishads, but Srila Prabhupada definitely has given this example several times to illustrate this point. That if you have a bird in a cage, like I say, a pet parrot or pet budgie or something, and you simply take care of the cage, clean it very nicely, polish it, make it very nice, the cage, but you neglect to feed the bird inside the cage, then the bird cannot be happy. Even though you're taking really good care of the bird's cage, which is important, it's not, you shouldn't neglect. The bird should not have to live in a dirty environment. But if you simply take care of the cage and don't feed the bird can never be happy. So similarly, if we simply take care of the body, which is an outward covering of the soul, and we neglect to actually take care of the soul, we neglect to, in simple terms, feed the soul, or more clearly to understand what the needs of the soul are, and to fulfill those needs, then we can never be happy. Just like the bird can never be happy just by cleaning its cage. So through Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, or in other words, by approaching a bona fide spiritual master then one can learn what actually are the needs of the soul and how to satisfy those needs, and then one can actually be happy. So the needs of the soul is that it's part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, and therefore it's the business of the duty of the soul, or the desire of the soul is to serve the Supreme Soul. That's described by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Mamevam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtanandriyani prakriti stani karshati. So Krishna explains in that verse that the living entities in this world are they're my eternal fragmental parts, Krishna says. That's actually what they are. But right now they are struggling with this. Right now they are situated in the material nature, prakriti stani, and therefore they're struggling. They're struggling only with the six senses, which include the mind. Manashashtanandriyani prakriti stani karshati. So our happy position is to serve Krishna because we're his part and parcel, but right now we're struggling with the six senses, including the mind, trying to gratify our senses, but it's just a struggle and it never makes us happy. So the living into his real position is described by Lord Chaitanya in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. When he was inquired by, I think it was either Rupa Goswami or Sanatana Goswami, that what is my actual position? Lord Chaitanya replied, Jivera Surupahaya Krishnera Nityadasa. That the actual Swarup, or the actual position of the living entity, his constitutional position, is that he is the eternal servant of Krishna, Krishnera Nityadasa. So that is our actual position, and when we act in that way as the servant of Krishna, then we become happy and satisfied. So the process given to us by Lord Chaitanya and passed down through Srila Prabhupada is the main process is to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra with attention, then that is the beginning of devotional service to Krishna. That's described in two places. One is in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yamaraj states, Bhakti Yoga Bhagavati Tannama Grahanadavi. He says, devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead begins with the chanting of His holy name. And also in the Nectar of Devotion, it's stated, there's a verse quoted that says, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhavet Graimindriyai Sevan Mukhe Hiji Vado Swayam Eva Spurajyadaha, which states that one cannot appreciate the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna with one's blunt material senses. But when one engages the senses in the service of the Lord, beginning with the tongue, then the tongue becomes purified and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is. So the verse says, Jiva Do. Jiva means the tongue, and Ado means Adi, beginning with the tongue. So as you know, the tongue has two functions, to vibrate and taste. So by chanting Hare Krishna and tasting prasadam, that's the beginning of devotional service. So chanting Hare Krishna is the beginning of devotional service, and when we chant Hare Krishna with attention, then we actually become satisfied. It's like we haven't eaten for a long time, and now we actually have to actually eat something after some time. And so therefore devotees because when one chants Hare Krishna, one is directly associating with Krishna and serving him. Because Krishna's name is, Krishna being absolute, his name is not different from himself. So we are directly associating with Krishna through sound vibration. And we become fully satisfied. So therefore devotees, it is recommended that devotees start their day by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Ideally all 16 rounds, but at least as many as possible before one begins one's day. In that way, one will actually be satisfied in spiritual consciousness, and it will set the tone for the day. And one will be able to see the material worlds as Krishna's energy and not as a place for my enjoyment. One will be able to see that it's because it belongs to Krishna, it's meant to be used in Krishna's service. So chanting Hare Krishna empowers one with that kind of spiritual vision. And then all the other activities in devotional service, like reading Srila Prabhupada's books, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, worshipping the deity, taking prasadam, distributing prasadam, all these other many different forms of devotional service, they all actually expand from the chanting of the holy name. They expand from our japa. Even kirtan expands from our japa. Um, and that is why when we take initiation, we in the vows we take to follow the four regulative principles and to chant the Hare Krishna mantra 16 rounds. So out of all the forms of devotional service that are there, the only ones, they're all extremely important. But the only one we actually vow to take is the chanting of the 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra, which indicates that it's the most important, and the other forms all expand from that. So my point there was that just as the bird in the cage is satisfied when we feed it, the soul becomes satisfied when we chant Hare Krishna and engage in devotional service to Krishna. And this is the knowledge that Maharaj Jadabharad will gradually reveal to King Rahugana. But Srila Prabhupada also explained in the verse I prepared for some purports back that this International Society for Krishna Consciousness is trying to elevate human society from the animal platform of thinking one's the body to the spiritual platform, to the actual platform of spiritual perfection. So that means that understanding we're not the body, and then beyond that, to understand what the activities, let me rephrase that. Understanding we're not the body, but we're the spirit soul. And then understanding what the activities of the spirit soul are. That is what Srila Prabhupada's aim was. And he states in that purport, it's not like just for some individuals, but he wants, and the goal of this movement is to elevate the whole of human society to that stage of spiritual perfection. And of course, it's a gradual process, but that is what we do in ISKCON. That is our aim. That is, if we sometimes unsure if we sometimes become unsure or forgetful of what our purpose is, what our aim is in the society, well, that is our aim, to elevate the whole of human society to the stage of spiritual perfection, which means actually understanding that they are the eternal servant of Krishna and engaging in the activities of the eternal activities of devotional service to Krishna. So as individuals, we should understand our aim is to ourselves come to that stage of spiritual perfection, as well as to try to help as many other people as possible come to that stage of spiritual perfection. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions or comments or anything anyone would like to share or add to the class? Excuse me, say that again. Yes, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's very, yeah, yeah. Let it free, yeah. Thank you. It's very nice. I've never actually even thought of that before, but it's very appropriate. Yeah. Thank you. Very, very nice. The bird's actually most happy when it's freed from the cage. So we're most happy when we're not. Um, so while in the body, we want to feed the soul by engaging in devotional service. And then gradually we don't want to take another material body to undergo birth, death, old age, and disease again. Correct. In the very liberated stage, when one is a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, it doesn't make a difference then if one's in the body or outside of the body. But still, such a person is not in the body in a certain sense. It's just like the body's there, but they're actually not affected by it. Yeah. But yeah, basically, we want to become free from this material engagement and go back home, back to Godhead, and not have to accept another material body and have to undergo birth, death, old age, and disease again. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful analogy. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.